Second, and welcome back to another episode of the Swandingo Files. Today I have with me Meghann Trapp, fellow veteran. She's also an author, and she's got a story to tell you all today. So, welcome on, Meghann. I know you're busy. I know you had to reschedule due to dental. My worst fear is dental. I swear to God, I will not go to the dentist for anything.
Right. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited and honored to be here. So appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day and rescheduling with me. But today we're going to talk about why you joined the Air Force. You know, not the best branch, but it is what it is. What you did while you're in, your transition out, and everything you're doing now today to improve your life and also help other veterans. So
Sorry,
if you
my
can
eyes are
begin, you're good.
watering. Yeah, so like I said, thank you for having me on. I'm super honored and appreciative, humble, grateful, all those things. I love, not only working with the veterans and helping them out, but just getting my story out there because my kind of like motto, I guess if you want to say, is even if my story helps one person or impacts one person or makes a difference, and that's all that it needs to. So yeah, I actually joined the Air Force at a much later age. I joined at 27 and a half because I was a firefighter for about 3 years before I joined. And I was from Colorado, so that's where I was at the time. And it really actually took me a little bit longer to kind of even figure that out because I was really, I did well. Like I sold cars and I sold motorcycles and I just kind of like tried a little bit of everything here and there at a young age. And it just didn't click. And so I'd get hired. I had no problem. I was always a hard worker, but then I'd start a job and I'd get super bored. I'm like, oh, this sucks. So I think it was about 24-ish, 24 and a half. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And then that's how I just decided one day I was going to be a firefighter. And it just really, it's like everything lined up and clicked and it made sense. And about 3 years into it, my ex-boyfriend at the time, who had been a cadet at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, he kind of randomly popped back in and was like, "Hey, you should join the Air Force." And I don't honestly, I don't really have like a cool story as why I joined because I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Um,
Just want to get out of town.
it's
You
like,
just want
yeah,
to get out of
well,
town, or
yeah, I think a little bit of everything. I was like I said, it's hard to get into firefighting anyway, especially as a female at that time. In Colorado, like I really wanted to be done with firefighter, and the testing process is back then even was insane. They only did every couple of years, like every 2 years, I believe, and the testing was really really hard. And you're testing against like 3,000 applicants. And I had a bunch of certs, but I did not have, a ton of experience yet. So I got on with my first department in a town called Franktown. It's much bigger now, but it's like halfway between Denver and Castle Rock, Colorado. And so yeah, I was on with them, and then I thought after talking to my ex, I'm like, what do I have to leave? But maybe it would be great to join the Air Force. I mean, I could try, and I had all these goals like travel, get my degree, do all these cool things, and that's exactly what I did. So I went and signed up, and being older, I was like, if you guys don't give me this job, I'm not gonna join. And so yeah, I got firefighter. I put in for Italy. That was my first pick, was Aviano Air Base Italy, and that's what I got. So I got orders to Italy, and I was like, this is awesome.
that's actually funny. You mentioned Aviano Air Base because on my way to
Vincenza.
Kuwait.
Oh, Kuwait,
Yeah,
yeah.
on the way to Kuwait, we stopped in Aviano. They said that we had a plane break malfunction. I was
Right.
18 years old, no idea about the real world yet, really. About to go
Right.
to Iraq, and of course, Italy at 18 you can drink.
Yep.
And what did I do that night as a young 18-year-old? Pretty much by myself. I got drunk.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
actually met a bunch of Air Force people, and they started buying us drinks, and they were actually pretty cool over there. I actually enjoyed my short amount of time, only 24 hours there, but it was actually very pretty there. At least I thought.
Oh, it honestly, like I see myself retiring in here. I didn't want to leave Italy. After my 2 years were up, I'm like, I don't want to go back to this. I mean, it was such an amazing experience. I mean, there's times that, it's hard. You got to put up where we were a NATO base, right? So we were constantly doing exercises, OREs, like Operation uh, exercises to prepare because we were a NATO base, right? But that kind of sucked. But really, other than that, I mean, it's like we didn't technically have a leave area. So as a firefighter, we worked 24 on, 24 off. Me and the guys, me and my shift, we would go everywhere on our days off. I mean, I had my car shipped over there. I was in Germany, all over Italy, France, Switzerland. I mean, I've been to so many countries. And the same thing with you could hop on a train and go pretty much anywhere with a matter of hours. You know,
Wow.
it was insane. And I learned to speak the language, the food. Don't even get me started on the food. It's like you come back to the States, it's like, what is this crap? So,
And the beer. I don't know if you drink beer or not, or did, but yeah, the beer over there was a lot better.
oh yeah,
And
it's just yeah, it's such an eye-opening experience, you know. And of course you had airmen that lived in the dorms that would sit there and be like, this sucks, and they just, you know, play video games. And I'm like, what are you doing? People spend thousands of dollars to travel to Europe, and you're getting paid good money because back then that was, you know, the euro was what, 2-to-1 ratio. So my cola was like $900 a month off
ooh,
cost of living allowance, cost of overseas living allowance. So you were getting all the extra money because the dollar was not equal to the euro at the time, and the euro was, you know, worth way more than the dollar. So I was like, cool.
yeah, it's funny you say that. You know, the mostly the younger privates and everything. So I was in South Korea for a little while and
Mhm.
for a year, and I had a blast in South Korea. Even though we're closer to the DMZ, I still had a blast. I still went out, you know, saw a bunch of stuff, got to meet a bunch of different people, picked up a little bit of language, but I've lost all that by now. And people are sitting there talking crap about Korea. It's like it's not that bad. Yeah,
No,
we go to the
I
field
don't
a
get
lot.
it. I don't get it. It's like you're overseas. Like people do not get this experience all the time. And exactly. It's like, man,
Nope.
take advantage of
Well,
it.
well, that's their fault, and they can. That's probably why they didn't last very long in the military, and they hated it so much. But I liked it. So you're a firefighter.
I'm like,
Oh,
oh, I'm off.
oh no, you're good. So you're a firefighter for the whole, what was it, 10 years you did?
So I was fire and I was active duty, and then so I was Aviano Air Base, Italy, and then I guess that was my payoff for being in Italy. My first duty station, I got stationed in Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina,
I haven't
Sumter,
been to
like
that
in
one yet.
in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was awful. It was a culture shock. I'm from Colorado, so going to South Carolina, and this is like the armpit of America. you're, you're
For anybody
about
listening from South Carolina,
sorry. No,
disregard. She just doesn't understand.
they'll agree with me if you say Sumter. They're like, oh my gosh. And it was weird because it's not a big town, but there's a lot of issues. I mean, the guys were like, hey, don't ever go to Walmart by yourself after 8 o'clock at night. And I was like, what? You know, so there's a lot of crime. There was a lot of issues that the Air Force tries to keep on the down low and not tell people about. And it was just a really weird area because you'd be in one section of Sumter and you'd be driving and it'd be like these beautiful, I'm guessing like retired military or people with money, and then you'd be in like the trailer park, and then you'd be on like the wrong side of the track somewhere. Like, well, I'm gonna get shot, you know? Like,
Little mixture of every single culture out there.
it was pretty. People always joke about Fayetteville, North Carolina, where Fort Bragg is. They're like, oh, Fayetteville. I'm like, no, Sumter's way worse than Fayetteville, way worse.
I would have never thought being next to an Air Force base that it would actually be worse. I never would have thought that.
Well, I'm like, okay, it was a much older base, which they at the time when I got there, because I got there August of 2000, end of August 2011, so they had just built like brand new dorms, and they were definitely doing a lot of, you know, Air Force life, right? But
Hmm.
outside of it, I'm like, they must have had this base forever because I'm guessing they just picked it. There's nothing there. The good thing about it is I was about an hour and 20-30 minutes from Charleston, which Charleston's really cool, and then Myrtle Beach and everything. But I had no desire to hang out in Sumter. It was really tough. And I had come from being the only female in my fire department in Italy, right? And going to, which that was norm anyway. I mean, I went to Shaw, and it was the same thing. They hadn't had a female, I think, in like 7 years. So it was this, again, all over, this huge deal, like, oh, we're getting a female firefighter. And I was like, you know, give me a break. And when I first got there, yeah, I started work early September because they gave me that leeway to, you know, house hunt and stuff. And then October of 2000, like right a month after I got there, I found out that I had won firefighter of the year coming from Italy. And I didn't even know that because it's a peer, not your peers put the award, like they put your name in for the award. And so I had no idea that my name was even in the mix. And all of a sudden, and if anybody knows anything about fire department, same thing in most military units, but especially in fire department, we live to like, you know, play jokes on each other and give each other crap. I mean, we live for that stuff. It's kind of like it's the norm of the firehouse. And one of my buddies from Italy, one of the firefighters, the Italian firefighters, he messaged me on Facebook and he's like, "Hey Meghann, congratulations on firefighter of the year." And I'm like, "Oh, hilarious. Haha, funny joke." His name is Fabrizio. I was like, "Oh, you're real funny, Fabrizio." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm serious." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I mean, totally thought he was joking. I'm like, "That's not even funny to joke about, man." And he was like, "I'm serious." And just he kept trying to convince me. And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And then like 5 minutes later, I get a message on Facebook from my old fire chief's wife. And she was like, "Oh, Meghann, congrats, winning firefighter of the year." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess he was serious because if it's coming from the chief's wife, it's for real." So,
That's cool.
yeah,
That's
I was blown
nice.
away. I was like, "What?" Because I was, again, the only female. And, there were some people that really gave me a hard time constantly. That was a huge honor. That was just, I was blown away to have that award. I mean, I was like, wow, all the hard work that I did, everything that I dedicated into my job. And a lot of it was because I was very passionate. I absolutely loved what I did. So going from all of that, I had just really got burnt out at Shaw, by the culture there, and just I didn't want to leave the military, and I didn't want to leave the fire department, but I was super burnt out, and so I was really on the fence. I'm like, okay, my 4-year contract's pretty much almost up, and I had to do the meet with my first sergeant and my commander, and I was like, I think I'm just done. I don't want to leave the military completely, but I'm good. I'm going to go re-enlist in the Guard. And they were like, what? You know, they were like, you're going to be testing for staff sergeants and you're going to be an NCO. What are you doing? Just go. They're like, we need good people like you. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, these guys are exhausting. It doesn't matter how hard I work, what I say, what I do. Because there was still, like I said, unfortunately, the guys that would just give me so much grief and constantly, "Oh, you get special treatment because you're a woman." I'm like, I have to work twice as hard to prove myself in the fire department because I'm the only woman. And yet it shouldn't be that way. But it's just kind of the nature of the beast still. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. And I reenlisted in North Carolina, went with the Guard. They didn't have any firefighter positions open at the time. So coming from active duty, they would have had to take me, but I would have just been sitting there kind of hanging out, waiting to get a slot, which means I wouldn't have been able to deploy. I wouldn't have been able to go TDY, do any like temporary stuff. I wouldn't have been able to like full on really be in a position because the way that the Guard works, they have to have like a slot for that position and they go a rank up, right? So I had already tested for staff sergeant so I was already going to get, I was putting on staff like right away. I was an E4. And I was really bummed because I was like, what? So luckily I had a really great recruiter and he had known me. He'd been talking to me for a while through the whole process of transitioning I went Palace Chase, which is straight from like no separation. So straight from active duty into the Guard. And that's when he introduced me to air medical evacuation technician. And of course I was like, what the heck is that? I've never even heard it. He had me go meet with the commander and a couple of the people from the unit. And I instantly was like, this is awesome. You're a flyer. You fly on C-130s. As a Guard unit, you do some awesome stateside, humanitarian stuff, plus state deployments, which are any natural disaster, and then your federal stuff. So I cross-trained into that, and the training, I mean, the certification process for that alone, like my schools, was a whole nother year of training just to get certified because you have to go to Fort Sam Houston for your 5.5 months it's actually the Air Force took over the program when they did the joint base with Fort Sam. So it's run by the Air Force, but it's a Navy corpsman and Air Force medical technician program together. So all the corpsmen I went through with corpsmen and with Air Force medics. And it was an awesome experience because then I got to meet just a ton of, Navy corpsmen and kind of learn more about the Navy. And then you go on to like your phase 2 and phase 3, and you're doing all these clinicals. So I did clinicals at SAMC, and I was doing ER rotations and pretty much every like labor and delivery and oncology. And I mean, it was an awesome experience. And I'd already had some good in the field experiences being a firefighter or medic, especially civilian, before I came military, but I'd never been really in the hospital setting as much. So that was really cool. And I was surprised because I'm at heart, I'm like, I'm a diehard firefighter. Like, I'm never gonna love medical more than fire. And I really fell in love with it, fell in love with the job because it's such a cool position. We have, it's a 5-person, so like per one patient, if we're medevacing a patient out, whether it's downrange from Germany to the States, or we're taking a person state from like Andrews Air Force Base to wherever they're stationed at, it's a 5-person crew. So you have your 2 nurses, which are your officers, and then your 3 med techs, which are your enlisted. And you work so closely together that you really just get to see that whole thing. And it put me on the path of wanting to become a flight nurse and go the officer route. And I was actually halfway through nursing school when everything happened with my assault. And so that was, I think, just a huge blow to what they knew that I was planning on staying in and retiring and work. I mean, I was, like I said, just full-time school, working my butt off when everything just kind of came crashing down. So that's how I got to that point.
So you briefly mentioned it, and I don't. It's really up to you how much you want to go into it. But you said something about an assault,
Yeah.
like, yeah. I don't know. That's tough. I don't even know
It
really
is.
what to say.
I talk about it a lot. I think it took me a while to really get to this point because when I came, so it happened on my deployment. I actually got pulled back to fire. I had moved home to Colorado, and there's not a guard air evac base, air evac like wing or unit in every single state. They're only in select states. So when I left North Carolina and moved home to Colorado, obviously it was going to be a challenge. It's been done, but it's really hard to like even do quarterly drills with a unit that's halfway across the country. And so the closest guard unit with an air evac wing was in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so I was like, cool, I'll just transfer to that unit. And my guard unit signed off on it from North Carolina. Got out there and I was drilling in Cheyenne. And then I took a contract job as a firefighter in the Marshall Islands in 2015, which was a whole other awesome experience. Yeah, I was down there for a year. It was pretty sweet. So I came home and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to, really get into my job and start doing stuff with airvac. And they came to me and they're like, of course, my primary AFC was fire because that was what I came in as originally. Even though I held my 4NO, which is a MedTech and X4NO flyer. Basically, you hear about it, but it's like very rarely does it happen in the Air Force. And it happened to me. They're like, oh, your primary AFC is fire. We're going to pull you back to the fire department and you're going to deploy to Kuwait. And I was like, what? Like I just got home 2 months ago. And I guess the way that I am, and also coming from active duty, I was, because I guess a bunch of other people had basically said, I'm not going. And I was like, you can do that? But I had great experiences with the guard, but it kind of happens in the guard, right? They're like, yeah, I'm not going to go. It's like, that's your duty. That's literally your job. So I, of course, was not happy, but I'm like, I have to go. I'm not going to say no to these people. Like I joined the military and it's my duty. So I got geared up. Mind you, I'd been out of fire for 4 years. So I was not only was I behind on all the fire stuff because I was so, I was training and all these other things for medical or for med tech. The fire department squadron that we're part of is civil engineering, is CE. So it's like I had to get caught up on all the firefighter stuff that I was like that had lapsed on just like certs and things, plus all the stuff for CE. Like I hadn't gone to Silver Flag, and Silver Flag is like a pre-deployment type thing that CE has to do if you're a part of the CE squadron, which is like Power Pro, HVAC, Struct. Basically, we're like, we're like the workhorse of the Air Force. We're the people that like go and get it done, right? Because we're all like the physical hands-on jobs. And we have to be trained to set up a bear base if we're ever forward deployed to set up an actual bear base. And you have to do it every so often. Well, I hadn't done it because I'd been out of the career field for years. So just stuff like that, it was like, okay, I've got 4 months to literally knock out 4 years of stuff that have not been done. So it was just like boom, boom. I mean, it was a really stressful. I was like constantly up in Cheyenne. Denver to Cheyenne's 117 miles. I'm like driving, up there, getting everything done for this deployment. But I was like, you know what? Okay, it's Kuwait. Everyone who knows, like, what's gonna happen in Kuwait? It's Kuwait. It's gonna be a sweet deployment. I'm gonna get paid. I'm gonna work out. Whatever. So that was my mindset. I was like, awesome. It's not the best, but it could be worse. And so I deployed. I left in July of 2016, and literally within, gosh, the first 2 months, everything that could go wrong went wrong. I mean, I tore my rotator cuff. I broke my tailbone. I was sexually and physically assaulted because so mind you, I'm a staff sergeant. Okay. There's a tech sergeant. So he's a E6. I was E5. And he's active duty. He's in the same squadron, but not the same job. He was like structures guy. Yeah. Well, we were dating, but it wasn't like serious. And then I find out that he's married. And of course, I'm like, hello, that's my career, dude. Not only is it wrong, but you're jeopardizing my career now, because if somebody would have found out, I had no clue and I could have been held accountable for it. So I was furious and I immediately ended it. I was like, don't ever talk to me again. Boom. This guy flips out, starts literally chewing out, because I had made friends with some of his friends, because of course we all hung out together, like at the pool and stuff in the movie theater. And he started just like interrogating them every time they would go hang out with me. Just basically he snapped and went completely crazy. Started stalking me. And then when you think like, oh, how can someone stalk you in a desert, in a deployed location that's this big? It can happen. And it was scary. I don't get easily intimidated. And it got to the point where I literally feared for my life if I came forward while he was still there, because they were on the rotation before me. They were getting ready to go home. And it was so bad that I waited until he was stateside. I had messaged his old roommate, because he was, they were going home, and he knew about the whole thing. He knew I was going to come forward and report it. But I waited until he left. And the whole time while I'm going through this, I luckily had a really, really good chaplain that I met with, and he was like 100% supportive. He, of course, was, constantly like, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about you. But long story short, it snowballed into this. I mean, I was stuck in the deployed location. They wouldn't send me home. So not only am I dealing with 2 major injuries, I'm dealing with the actual, like, the whole assault, like going through unreported or unrestricted case. So OSI is investigating it. And they're like, okay, we need you to call him and we need you to confront him. And they were like, it was like some crazy John Grisham movie where they're like sitting in the room and like recording the phone call of me confronting him to get him to admit to what he did. And I'm also the NCOIC of 911 Dispatch Operations Center and logistics for the entire fire department. So I'm an E5 and an E7 position, reporting directly to the fire chief. I had 2 full-time jobs like combined into one overall job, and it was extremely stressful. And I'm going to school and finishing my last class to get my degree. So it was just like, it was tough. And I came home, and the investigation was still ongoing, but it was kind of, nearing the tail end of it. And I had a really amazing SVC, which is Special Victims Counsel, that was appointed to me by the Air Force. And this guy's commander, this is also why I don't know if you know the push in Congress, they finally got rid of command-directed investigations. Specifically, my case, perfect example of why they got rid of it. It was OSI put the whole thing together. They said, absolutely, this guy, like, we have all the evidence, we have everything you need to prosecute. They turned it over to his command because he went back to his base, right? He was on rotation for me at home. His commander took over the investigation and did everything they could to protect him. They refused to charge him. Yeah, they refused to charge him with sexual assault. They only charged him with physical assault and adultery. They then had the nerve to turn back to me and my lawyer and be like, oh, well, what would you like to see as a punishment? And I was like, why are you even talking to me at this point? Because you guys haven't even charged him with sexual assault. Like, You sit here and preach about there's a zero tolerance policy. Zero tolerance policy. It is beat into your head from the minute you step foot at any basic training. I don't care what branch you're in. We all know that's like one of the first things. Don't assault someone. Don't touch people. Don't, you know what I mean? It's like basic stuff, and yet perfect case, perfect example of a sexual assault case, and they're like, oh, we're not even going to charge him. We're just going to. And then it was a slap on the wrist. It was a demotion, which I pushed for, but his commander gave him a demotion with a suspension so that he wouldn't get kicked out of the Air Force. So this guy got to write out retirement. He was demoted for 6 months and then got his rank back on after good behavior.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
I've heard of stories I've never been personally seen because being Army combat arms before they started integrating females, I'd never been around females in the Army really hardly at all.
Right.
And I mean, I'd heard of stories, but as I've done this journey, I'm hearing more and more, and I'm following more and more people, and it's unsettling to know that this is even going on at all.
Oh yeah.
And our military, the U.S. military, like I would expect this out of some third world country, not
Right.
the greatest nation in the world.
And the worst part is that that's not even the worst thing. What's insane to me is I still kind of go back and forth, but I would say what happened after all of that, to me personally, was about 10 times worse than my actual assault because of what my command did to me. My command was the one who derailed my career. Mind you, like I brought up, okay, I was firefighter of the year. From that deployment, even while dealing with all of that, I was given an Air Force Achievement Medal for the work that I did. I came home messed up. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. I was a mess, right? Coming. I mean, you know how it is. Coming home from any deployment is hard, but coming home after having to go through all of that, I had to have shoulder surgery, and then dealing with everything else, and then I was ordered to go to mental health. I was ordered to go to therapy every week. I was never on medication. I was like, there was no reason why I should have been treated and judged the way that I was. But then my command, the minute they heard PTSD, because of course I had PTSD, they turned around. And I don't know if that's because I have so many Army and Marine friends that still serve with PTSD. And I'm like, okay, why is the Air Force so backwards when it comes, like they heard the word PTSD and they flipped out. They were like, oh, you need to be med boarded. And I'm like, excuse me, what? I'm sorry. Because again, I wasn't on medication. I wasn't doing anything that would like make me non-deployable. I mean, I was busting my butt commuting to Cheyenne from Denver, like actually on orders because they in the Guard it's a little bit different than active duty. They wouldn't even let me finish my orders at Buckley Air Force Base in Colorado, which was 26 miles from my house. I was driving 117 to Cheyenne to do work. And then they said, oh, you're a crappy firefighter. You're a crappy NCO. And I'm like, huh, that's
Quick
fine.
little turnaround.
So 10 years with nothing on my record, and all of a sudden I'm a piece of crap. I suck as a firefighter and an NCO, and I'm questionable and I'm emotionally unstable. And it was like, I mean, you talk about a knife in the back from not just my fire chief, all the way up to my wing commander. These people were on a mission to get rid of me, and they were pissed because I stood up and I fought hard. And I was like, there's no way in hell you're not doing this to me. I'm not just going to stand here and let you derail my life and my career. And I mean, you want to talk about toxic, corrupt leadership and all the wrong, we all hear about it, right? We see those people kind of here and there. I think active duty, I definitely saw some of it, but because this was a Guard unit, these people were so in bed with each other and they've been for years that I guarantee you there's a million other people like me from Wyoming that have had that happen to them. Because it was so easy for them. I was deemed fit for duty by an active duty psychologist at Buckley, and then these people were turning around saying that I was mentally unstable. And their commander from mental health at Buckley actually called up to my wing in Wyoming, to that Guard unit, and they were like, "What do you people think you're doing? You're not a mental health provider. You don't get to decide if she's fit for duty. That you're not." And I was like, right? These people are medical. They were the same job that I did. And they were trying to like strong arm the entire thing and be like, you have to turn over your entire mental health record. So I'm like, what? Not only is this a sexual assault issue, this is a mental health issue. And it's the policies that, we talk about again in the military. Oh, our doors open. We have an open door policy. Nobody should have their career jeopardized for, worrying about getting mental health provided to them and going and seeking treatment. But yet that's what happened. Um, and it kind of like my Hail Mary pass, because what had happened is I had already had my transfer approved to go to another guard unit in Colorado. And I wouldn't have been able to read. The wing commander who had signed my transfer tried to uphold the appeal or deny the appeal. I was like, nope, we're getting rid of you. And so on my way out, I had 2 weeks left, and I called the adjutant general of Wyoming, who was a four-star Army general, this old crusty infantry guy. His name was General Reiner, and I called his office up, and I was like, hey, this is Sergeant Trapp. I need to talk to the general about what's going on. And his secretary was like, what? Because she didn't even know who I was or what was happening. And I told her, she said, well, what's this regarding? And I laid it all on her. I'm like, yeah, well, you might want to know what the leadership over at the Wyoming Guard is doing to your people. And because, adjutant general is in charge of the Army and the entire Guard for the Wyoming Military Department. And so I called his office and I told him everything. And I wasn't supposed to get a meeting until December. My contract was up November 28th. And all of a sudden, my last day, I am literally out processing in Cheyenne. And I get called in with the adjutant or the area defense counsel who was helping represent me. We get called into the wing commander's office. And I'm like, okay, what's happening now? Are they trying to give me more paperwork? So I go in and sit down, and he made me feel that way. He was berating and like very condescending, and just, it was appalling. And then he's like, so we're going to go ahead and accept your appeal. And in my head, I'm laughing because I'm like, the general called you and chewed you out, didn't he? He chewed you out, thinking, holy crap, what are you people doing to this girl? And he was, you could tell he was furious. So they had to approve my transfer because I was like, awesome. So then last minute, I was like, sweet, I got 2 weeks left. I'm out of that place. And then I tried to go to the next unit and they refused to sign my physical and took 3 months to do it. So my contract ended. I was officially out. And I'm going to this reserves unit in Colorado at that time because the other unit had replaced, anyway, long story. But they turned around as their big kind of like screw you moment, and they gave me 2s on my mental health and my shoulder. And as a flyer, you can only have 1, like your rating.
Yeah, no, I get that part. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So they made sure. They were like, oh yeah, they were so angry about it. They were like, yeah, screw you, we're done.
So you literally got railroaded then out of the military and.
Yep. And at that point, I was like, I had fought. That was March of 2019, and my contract had ended literally November 27th of 2018, and I was still holding on to that hope. I'm like, ready to go. Tell my recruiter, yeah, man, just whenever. And he finally calls me up. He's like, finally got your PHA, which is your physical. Got your PHA. Got your stuff from the guard unit in Cheyenne. I'm like, these idiots, they jerking us around for months. Finally got it done, and he's like, yeah, I have some really bad news. And told me, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And that was it. Within a month, I had derailed not only, well, they had derailed my career, but it was scary how quickly I kind of unraveled because I was so depressed at that point. Like I said, I was in school full time, going to nursing school, and I had just lost the will. I had been fighting for so long and so hard. When that call happened, I was like, my life is over. I didn't get a retirement. I was out. I got nothing. 10 years and I got nothing. And it was like, okay, I'm no longer serving. I can't come back in because I had already filed for disability for the DOJ at the time. Looking at it, I don't know why I did that, but I was rated at 60%. And my recruiter's like, there's no Air Force flight doc in the world that will ever sign off on this. And I'm like, dude, it's for PTSD. It's not for anything else. And he was like, once you're out, you're out. Like, you can be in with it in the guard. You just have to waive your drill pay, right? But he's like, once you're, I'm like, that's so stupid. But anyway, so that happened. And it was like, I lost the will to do anything. I literally couldn't get out of bed. I didn't even go to school. I literally just laid in bed with my dog. If it hadn't been for my dog, I think I probably for sure would have ended my life. But even at the time, I was totally in denial about it because I'm like, well, I'm not one of those veterans who's like, I don't have my gun in my mouth, and I haven't like taken pills and I haven't, you know what I mean? Like I was so in denial about my own mental state. I was like, oh, I'm not that bad because I'm not actively planning out I'm not saying like I'm gonna kill myself. But every single day, I mean, I did not want to live. And I just kept thinking like, all right, if I die today, like that would be really great because then I don't have to suffer like this anymore and I don't have to. I mean, it was on the ledge, but I mean, I was right there, and that was in a matter of like 2 months, if that. Um, and thank goodness I had already started my fitness business a couple of years ago, Deadlift Diva, and I had met I'd gone to like Tony Robbins events and met like a lot of really amazing entrepreneurs and other people, mostly some were military, of course, too, but just all these people that I'd gone to like masterminds with and just really connected and networked. And this girl who I knew from one of those events reached out to me and she was like, I went to this event. She happened to be in Boulder in Colorado. And she's like, you need to reach out to this guy. I was so skeptical. I'm like, there's nothing that can save me at this point. Like, I'll do it. In my head, I was like, yeah, okay. Uh, so I called him. I was like, what do I have to lose? And I called him and I started, just kind of talking to him. He's like, hey, come up, meet me for lunch. And we had lunch in Boulder, up where CU is, Colorado University. And he talked to me and he was like, I absolutely can help you. And I know that this is going to change your life. And I still was like, yeah, okay, and I started, that was May of 2019 that I went to this course. And I don't know if you've ever heard of NLP, which is a lot like, Tony Robbins and people that are very much in the mindset and personal growth and development. And I went to this course and it completely changed my life. I mean, through hypnosis and timeline therapy and all the coaching. And I actually did it because I'm like, well, one, of course, all the trauma that I'd been through with my assault and things from previous parts of my life. But I had the mindset of like, how am I going to ever survive as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, if I can't even get out of bed? I can't even go on. And that's really how I started my coaching business with Meghann Trapp Coaching and how I got to where I'm at now. Because, I mean, when I say I had a huge shift from going to not wanting to leave my bed or my house and just wanting to die every day, within 6 months of taking that course and getting out, I started actually just sharing my story on Facebook, just doing Facebook lives. And that was really scary at first because it was like the first time I'm ever sharing my story publicly in my assault. And I was really nervous, but I thought, you know what, people need to hear this. And it's important because people don't talk about it. People still in this day and age, we're very, it's like, anything that's uncomfortable, mental health, sexual assault. I mean, people don't want to talk about that stuff because it is hard to talk about and it's painful and it's also it makes people uncomfortable, right? But I'm like, that's why I share my story because we need to talk about this stuff.
It is very uncomfortable to talk about anything to do with the mental side because I know I'm not going to ask you your age, but I know people my age and older. I mean, there's still that stigma around it,
Absolutely.
and I tell people all the time that come on the show, I'm doing this to help my mental health because I'm done going through the VA because their biggest thing is, and I know they're starting to change a little bit,
Yeah,
trying to get more of a holistic approach, a little bit more like meditation and stuff like that, a little bit more. But when I was going through it, it's just like, here, take a bunch of pills,
yeah,
or
yeah.
you
It's like,
get a
take your
different,
medication. It's like, what?
or you get a different person constantly. You'll talk to like one person for a few months, and you get somebody else, so you're repeating the cycle over and over and over again. It's just like this isn't helping.
Right.
So that's why I started. One of the reasons I started doing this was to help my mental health, to hear stories of other veterans, and not just veterans, anybody, first responders too. I've heard some
Right.
pretty messed up shit so far, and but to see that people can overcome it and improve themselves, either entrepreneur or they seek some sort of, holistic approach to it, just anything that helps them get over it, it's good for other people to hear it because there's no reason that we have so many people committing suicide. There's just no reason for it. I've only been doing this for a short amount of time, and
Hmm.
this short amount of time, I've had so many people reach out to me, wanting to get on the show, talk, expose themselves, and it's like that is crazy. Like I never would have thought this.
Yeah, no, it is, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it is heartbreaking that, I mean, I don't even know the numbers anymore. I haven't looked at statistics lately. I honestly feel and have felt that 22 a day is way under what the actual numbers are.
Yeah, I
But
think
I
they just
felt,
upped it actually. I don't remember what
yeah,
it was too, but and it was quite a bit.
right. I mean, but it is. It's like, and not only that, but then with COVID, then you look at like just how, with that crap going on, how hard it's been for people. I mean, hello, we isolated everybody. We took, we took people that we already have enough going on, even with just, trying to function with the normal life, right? And then now you isolate people and made them stay home and just, or even the ones that were working were overloaded. Um, and it's sad. I mean, I've felt really strongly the urge that, I mean, obviously my big passion and for sure is veteran and military, and that's why I kind of really target working with SARC programs and SHARP programs and going and sharing my story. But I've really also started to focus on like colleges and high schools and even younger kids because I'm like, kids. I mean, I know when I was a kid, which was a long time ago, but
I'm not
in
gonna ask, okay? I promise you.
in high school, I mean, nobody talked about consent. Nobody talked about, that was like normal. It's like, oh, they're joking. People can, and especially as a girl, there were, I look back, even in my 20s, I look back and it is scary, especially now that I share this stuff and I speak out about it. I'm like, there are so many times when I am so blessed and so grateful that something didn't happen then because there were so many situations I drank too beyond in excess even before I joined the military. And there were so many times I was in situations that it could have just absolutely been a horrific situation. And you don't think about that, especially in your 20s, because you're like, yeah,
No,
I'm
no,
out
we
of the
don't. We don't think about anything.
No. And so for me, I really am looking at wanting to expand that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's super, it's heartbreaking anytime I hear, especially a veteran or a military member, but now it just seems like it's everywhere. And I mean, you think about mental health and sexual assault, they do not have any bias. It can affect anyone at any time, in any gender, any race, any age, right?
Yeah, I know you mentioned something about men too, and I know that's kind of the what do you call it? I guess the unspoken one more of. I know
Oh yeah,
women, yeah, of course, we always hear about the women. We never hear
right.
about men at all.
And I
And I don't
know,
know even statistics behind it because it's not even put out there for anybody to hear.
I want to say, I think my friend, I have a buddy that has really, he's such an awesome guy. His name's Perry. He's from the UK and he and I are in a lot of similar groups and he's just doing awesome right now because he's come out and started sharing his own story. His grandfather sexually abused him from like a very young age. And he's written a book and he has put out statistics, of course, of men and young boys, and it's alarming. I know it's one in every four girls, and I want to say it's one in every six boys. I think are the stats now. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But it is. It's like I said, when I started doing my Facebook lives, that's what pushed me on this path of okay, I need to be sharing this. And you're absolutely right. I love the fact that you brought up um, talking about this really helps you. Same thing. People are like, well, how could you do that? And how can you, how do you not get triggered? And I've done a ton of personal growth and development. If I was the person I was 3, 4 years ago in that mindset, there's no way because I was so triggered. And that's not to say, I mean, it's not like I have a magic wand and now that I've done this stuff and I'm not, I don't sit here and I'm like, nothing bothers me and, my PTSD is non-existent. No, it's, but you work at it every single day. It's like going to the gym, you don't just go one time and then you're like, sweet, I have a six pack and I'm totally ripped, like,
Hey, it could happen one day. I may be 38, but I'm gonna get to that gym again in a month or two, and I'll have a six pack in a day. Just kidding.
but it's consistency. It's
Hmm.
constantly working at it. And you're going to have days. I mean, that's what I said. Like, there's days I have off days. I'll go back to that place, not ever to the place of, being in that just dark, not ever seeing the light and not wanting to come out. But there's days when, yeah, I do feel the weight of what I've been through. And I look back and it is hard because I didn't get to choose to leave my career and to leave I mean, I loved what I did. Loved it. If somebody came to me and was like, "Hey, we want to give you can go back in," I'd be like, "Okay, I'm in. Where do I sign?" And people are like, "Are you insane?" You know what? Yeah, maybe I am, but I loved
Well,
it.
even though you went through what you went through, I'm just glad really that the good still outweighed the severely bad. I mean,
Oh yeah. I
I
mean, as
mean,
I said, like I look at, and that's what it takes. It took me. That's why I love what I do as an NLP coach. That's what I'm working on now. I'm building my coaching clientele and helping other people like myself because it teaches you to shift your perspective. It teaches you to look at like, okay, I can't control those people, right? But those people, they have to at some point they're going to have to own up to that. They're going to have to accept what they did. I can only control myself and I can own my behavior. Who am I choosing to be? Who am I choosing? What emotions am I choosing? Right? And how am I using my story to also help you? There's so many people that have never been able to share their story or stand up and even just tell somebody, right? It's not really about like, going and reporting it, but that's a facet of it. But I mean, even just sharing it, there's so many victims out there that have never told anybody what's happened to them. And that is a lot of weight to carry around.
well, even if they don't ever come out and say anything, at least they can hear stories, like you
Right.
said, and
And
hopefully they
then,
can lean
yeah,
into them a little
yep,
bit and find the perseverance to help them start getting over that hump to become better. So, because unfortunately, yeah, like you said, it does happen a lot more than what we even hear about or think about.
yep.
And it's a fucking sick world we live in, unfortunately.
It is.
So,
There is just, and it's now that I have a daughter. I mean, my daughter's 9 months old, and it's so different. I mean, I'm sure when you become a parent, and now like knowing that's another reason why I'm like I have to better prepare my daughter, but still, even giving her all the tools in the world, there is no safety net. There's no guarantee that nothing will happen to her. But knowing what I know and continuing to work hard, especially within the military and the veteran community of, okay, how do we make this better? This needs to change. And across the board, because I speak for all DoD, it's not, I don't do just Air Force. I mean, it's Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Army. Every event that I've done and the people that I've been have talked to and been interviewed by, and the feedback that is the same is that this culture needs to change. Oh, it doesn't happen, or I mean, you went to I'm sure it's the same thing where it's like death by PowerPoint. I mean, how is that? You were there,
yes,
you know,
you stop paying
hey,
attention
don't touch each other inappropriately. Okay, great.
after 30 seconds. Oh, I was an equal opportunity leader, so that was one of the classes I had to give when I was in South Korea, and you just see the faces on people, and it's just like you lose them at 30 seconds, and my world at that time, I know they started implementing females now. Well, towards the end of my career, there was no females in
Yeah,
my unit. So you're sitting telling a group of guys don't touch, females, and they're all like,
like, okay, cool. We don't have any feel right, but yeah, I mean, you
mm-hmm.
know,
That's funny
it's
you
just
mentioned you have a 9-month-old daughter. I got one daughter out of six kids, and her four older brothers, one younger brother, but her four older ones are very protective of her. So I
yeah,
don't think I have
babies.
too much to worry about. I'm more worried about, I don't know, I'm more worried about her beating up other kids in her class because she beats up on her 11-year-old brother already, and she thinks she's tough.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and I think, you bring up an interesting point too. It's funny because I'm the second of six, right? I have an older brother and three younger sisters and a younger brother, but I was total brute. I mean, obviously to be a firefighter, right? Like I was always
Yeah.
in trouble for beating up the boys because I'd get picked on. And I think that was really hard for me too. That made it almost not, I don't want to say double-edged sword. That's really not the right word, but for me, I think that even hit more home when all of this happened because it was humiliating. Because I've never, you know what I mean? Like I've
Never.
always been a protector of my female friends. I going out with the guys. I mean, they're like you ask the guys that I served with and the guys on my shift. I mean, they're literally my brothers. You call me brother and sister. You're like family. And they were like, dude, I'd choose you over 90% of the guys you work with to go into a fire because I know you're going to get me out, So, I mean, I was
So,
tough. And so to have that happen, it was like, it was embarrassing. And I think that kind of added to it too. The guys that I was with on the deployment, they didn't know how to handle anything. Some of them knew, some of the really close ones to me knew, but most of them, they didn't quite know the details. They just knew something was going on. And, but I think for them, having that from their perspective too. I'm sure if I talked to them about it, it was like, here's this girl that can pretty much, outperform the rest of us. She can handle her own. And so they really didn't know how to handle that either. And that's also why I like sharing my story is giving that feedback to really with male dominated career fields
mhm.
or the units that are typically still mostly men, because from their perspective, like, how do you handle that when something does happen like that to one of your sisters, or say it happened to a guy and he came forward if he ever had the courage to. And I related really well with the men that did reach out to me privately after I started doing my Facebook lives when I first shared my story, because I felt that same, like that shame of, like, I'm supposed to be this badass, and it's humiliating that this happened to me. And how did this happen? And yes, I'm not a man, so I will never know that perspective. But I think being in a male, literally being the only female, I felt that much on their level, because it was like, I can't share this with these guys. They're not gonna understand that. Um, so yeah, no, I do like that you brought that up, because it doesn't, it's not just this only affects women, and this is only, especially with like the whole Me Too movement and all of that stuff, right? But it's everywhere. It is everywhere, in every place, civilian, military, schools, young kids, adults. And you know, it's for me, if like I said, if I only impact one person for them hearing my story, and I help them in some way, and I let them know that there's other people, I'm out here speaking for those people, then my job is done.
You'll definitely impact more than one person, especially with your mindset and your strength from being a firefighter. I think you'll get more out there than what you think you will be. You will. What is your coaching program called?
So it's Meghann Trapp coaching, and that's so I'm actually working on doing like a group training too. I do one-on-one coaching, but it very much focuses on, like I said, for me, my shift was, I do like changing your daily routine. So like you brought up, like meditation, it's a very holistic approach to, timeline therapy. The difference in the traditional therapy as opposed to NLP is you don't go in and like talk about the event. And that's why it is so triggering for so many people, where they're like, I don't want to go to therapy. Or they feel like they just go and sit in therapy because they're just, it's like, okay, you share how you feel. And then the therapist's like, all right, see you next week. It's like, okay, you leave and you have all these emotions brought up. And it's not to discredit therapy at all, because mental health absolutely has a place and a purpose. But this is a different approach than traditional therapy of, okay, how do we heal in a faster time, by going and removing the negative emotions tied to that event, right? So it's shifting your mindset and your perspective, and it's using hypnosis and timeline therapy. And hypnosis, you kind of go through like your life as a timeline, and it's a lot more in depth than that. But Meghann Trapp coaching is what I do and what I help impact people with. So
Well, how do people get a hold of you?
So that's my Facebook page. They can look me up, Meghann Trapp on regular Facebook as well to, have all my Instagram handles and my LinkedIn and Twitter and all of that stuff. And it's I can shoot you all that information over too as well. I think I did. I can't remember if I sent my.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
If anything, we'll get back with you.
I was saying my spelling is a little different on my first name, but yeah, anyone can reach me on my personal page, my Instagram, my Facebook business. I'm pretty much everywhere. So.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. Um, things are looking really good for you. I like your coaching idea. I like that you're trying to bring more light to that besides just, bringing the trauma. I think that's my biggest reason why I also don't want to go and do that anymore. I'm tired of bringing up the trauma. I want a different approach, and I'm glad that more veterans are coming up with these new ideas because crazy veterans, they know it works. So,
Well,
but
it's also why, veterans are such great entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we know it's hard. I'll tell you, it is not easy when you start going into doing your own business. You have no idea. So it's like, oh my gosh, because you wear all the hats, right? So it's like, but
well,
yeah.
well, I appreciate you coming on today to another episode of Swandingo Files with Meghann Trapp. If you're ever in a fire and need somebody to save you, she'll come running. See y'all next time. Don't let the dango eat your baby.